Up front, but I will hand it off to Mark just a second.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm going to sit down because I am recovering from a flu that has devastated our downstairs operations for the last week or so. And then I'm going to basically talk with you about the only constant is change. When I talked with Eric and Charles about this, what they really asked me to do was talk with you about kind of how we do what we do and what we've learned in the process of doing that, because we're kind of an unusual company in terms of the way that we're structured and the way that we approach software development and fulfillment in our company. So I'm going to load up these slides. So Boomtime's actually a merger of two companies, a company that has been in Albuquerque for about 10 years called SpaBoom, and a company that I started called SmugCloud, which was a distributed labor company, right? Which is a platform company that was designed to get people, to aggregate people with particular skills, and basically build a virtual company out of them. Our real model is, and I had to go around and talk to all the advertising agency people today, but we're a pretty disruptive model because our target really is companies that really can't afford to deal with real advertising agencies in local marketplaces because they don't have a big enough advertising budget, or marketing budget, and they also can't afford to buy the do-it-yourself, software that they would have to buy in order to do some of the things that we do because the cost of ownership is very high. And so we fit in a niche where we have developed a product and an approach that basically allows us to deliver very high quality services to mid-sized small businesses, who today are basically just kind of left out in the cold in the digital marketing mix, right? And what we really do is we monetize earned media. If you think about, traditional advertising, you have, traditional media, radio, TV, used to be Yellow Pages, and digital media now, and then you have earned media, which is media where somebody writes an article about you in the newspaper, and our job is to basically tap into the largest source of earned media out there, which is word of mouth, right? Because word of mouth basically is the most powerful source of referrals for almost every business that we do business with. And so we become quite specialized and quite skilled at figuring out how to monetize that on behalf of our customers. Okay, so our approach to this is unusual. Basically what we did was we looked at, I've spent 25 years hiring advertising agencies, and so I have a lot of experience in the process that agencies go through, and it's a good process, but it's time consuming, and for most businesses it's too labor intensive and it costs too much money for them to basically afford. And so what we did was we actually decomposed that process and condensed it. So we do in about 2 hours what normally takes about 3 or 4 meetings with a good agency, to pull out of a business the things that drive the business, the things that they need to basically, get across to their potential customers. And we have built a methodology around it, in a practice model that allows us to do what an agency does, but to do it at about a quarter of the cost of a traditional agency in a local marketplace, right? And basically what we've done also is we've created a platform to automate this. And so, pretty much everything that we do sits on somebody's cloud. We use AWS. We don't make a lot of software ourselves. What we do is we build software platforms that are designed to basically help us manage the production process, the planning process, and the aggregation of distributed labor, because a lot of what we do depends on our ability to basically hire people who are highly skilled, and it's hard to find them in cities of the size of Albuquerque or El Paso, right? To really scale. And so our model is built around distributed labor. We have hundreds of people in the US and offshore who do work for us, and we concentrate on basically building software to help manage that process and to help manage the planning process so that we can deliver that in an efficient way. And that allows us to cut the costs even further, because basically it allows us to utilize that labor pool in a transactional model as opposed to basically hiring people and then having to fill up the work in order to hire. So we have a more efficient model. Okay? And we've developed a lot of IP and technology. This has been an interesting journey for us, because we have really been on this path now for a couple of years, and we have learned a lot of stuff about how word of mouth and local referrals really work. And we have built a lot of technology, that's designed to basically amplify those signals. Because the biggest issue, most small businesses, they really can't afford to keep track of the customers that they get through word of mouth referrals. 98% of the people who basically come to their website leave no trace. Their ability to basically keep those people in the funnel and keep them warm is a very difficult thing for a small business to do. We do it for them. We run a managed service, for our customers where we basically keep those very high quality, referrals, in the funnel, and we keep them warm for that business, until they're basically, that prospect has decided that they're going to actually buy, right? So a lot of what we do is based on a very deep knowledge of the consideration cycle and the milestones that consumers go through in different vertical categories as they make a decision about what they're going to buy and how they're going to buy it and whom they're going to buy it from. So we've built a lot of underlying technology that's designed to basically analyze that behavior and to amplify those signals at the right time for those potential prospects, so that basically we can pull them into action, because people go in and out of those funnels, right? If you think about LASIK, the LASIK consideration cycle is 13 months long. Right? And people are in and out of that cycle, right? If you think about assisted care facilities where we do a fair amount of business, that's a 7-day long cycle, okay? Because basically somebody gets released from a hospital and the hospital tells their children that they've got to go into an assisted care facility, and all of a sudden they're making this, incredibly high impact decision in a very short period of time. So we've developed technology that basically is designed to help us basically sequence, our communications with those customers, and to basically hit them at exactly the right time in order to get them to take action. I'm going to talk really fast here because I've got like 9 minutes. Okay, all right. So how we work? We're unusual in the sense that basically, our tools and our technologies are based on a very, very rapid iterative prototyping model, and we use Google Drive. We use the Google Cloud, and basically build minimum viable products on a continuous basis, right? So we're making changes to the underlying, tools that we use on pretty much a daily basis, right? And those changes are really driven by how we see customers interact, and secondarily how that works in the processes that we put in place. And so those tools give us the flexibility to make changes really, really quickly. Okay, much more quickly than you could even with an agile development model, right? And we do then transform them into products. But the heart of what we do is what we call the micro pivot. So if you think about traditional startups, you get to this place where you go, that's not working, right? And we got to pivot the company, right? And most people think of these things as existential events, right? This is I'm going to have to go to the board. I'm going to have to change everything. Our model is basically to pivot stuff pretty much every day. Right, at least on a weekly basis, we are making tweaks to the way that we talk to the customers, tweaks to the way that we are basically doing the work for them, and those things are translated into, using these very light prototyping tools, that sit on cloud-based, infrastructure and are very reliable and easy to modify for us, right? And then once we have gone through that process, what we do is we do what we call progressive platform integration. So we build software. We're a software company. Okay, and what we do is, as things work, we move them into an agile development process, and we put them into the core the core platform that we have developed. That said, we continue to experiment with using the Google Drive stuff, and so we're constantly tweaking on that side. And then when we find stuff that works, then we move it across, because the resources that we have are limited, and they are basically also are precious to us, right? So so we try to make as many mistakes as we can, to use the famous Facebook phrase, fail fast, right? We try to basically figure out what's not working before we invest in basically building it into the software platform, because the software platform, even though we have very efficient methodologies, is time consuming, and basically we want to make sure that the stuff that we put in it is the stuff that we really are going to wind up using and that's working best for us. Okay? why it works, okay? Look, I mean, the bottom line is that we're on a voyage of discovery. There's nobody that we know of out there who's doing what we're doing, making it up as we go along, to be perfectly honest with you, right? I mean, it is driven by by the feedback that we get out of the systems and by the data that we see and by our interactions with the customers, but the bottom line is that we're on a journey with our customers, and they're basically really driving a lot of what we do, and we do believe in that fail-fast model. If it's not working, it's going to be fairly evident to us fairly quickly that it's not working, and the worst thing that we can do is basically, get into a denial state. All right. The second thing is that we're really focused on balancing risk and resources. And this was, when I was talking about the way that we develop, part of the reason that we do that is because basically, development is inherently a risky thing, right? And you are devoting resources, to something that you have some evidence that's working. And what you want to do is basically tune that to a point where you are taking the lowest level of risk, hence our kind of micro pivot model, and you are applying it to the resources in a way that gets you the maximum yield from those resources, right? A big mistake that a lot of startups make is that they spend too much time developing things and too little time actually figuring out what's working. Okay, and if I were to leave you with one thing today, that would be the thing that I would leave you with, because it's a very dangerous trap to fall into, right? It is, you wind up defending your development work, at one level or another after you have committed the resources to it. And so the smarter thing to do is to basically constrain the resources that you're committing to it, and figure out what's working first, right? And then basically, add more resources as you go along. And it's a very difficult emotional and intellectual thing for people who are running startups to do, right? For a lot of different reasons, right? And the last part of this is that basically our business is driven by our customers' interactions with us, right? And by we have a very highly defined methodology in terms of the process. Somebody comes in, they do an intake with us, it lasts 2 hours. 45 days later, they're up and running. All of the content in the email campaigns that we run for them, or promotional campaigns, their website, all that stuff gets done in a very regimented way over a 45-day long period of time. And we have to do that because basically we're using all of these distributed resources, and we have to basically coordinate all of that activity, and we have a very high level of interaction with our customers. We have a high touch business, particularly in those first 45 days, and it allows us to basically, model the customer behaviors in ways that that are difficult for a lot of software companies to do, because basically they're not actually interacting with the customers. Okay, our business, because it's a managed service business, we whether we like it or not, we're interacting with the customers, and so our decision was to basically let them drive the bus, at the end of the day, and basically, watch how they respond to us and watch our interactions with them and watch their responses, to the development cycle and to the review cycle, so that we can tune it, so that it works best for them, right? Because if it doesn't work for them, it doesn't work for us, and we don't have contracts. Okay, so basically, if it's not working for our customers, then we want to be able to let them get out. And I was talking with Adam earlier, and we probably fire 10% of our customers before they become our customers. I take them through the intake process, or somebody does, and we go, this isn't going to work. Right? Because you're missing 1 or 2 or 3 of the key things, that makes this work for us. If we get a customer that has real word of mouth and has been in the marketplace for a while, and that basically has a high impact decision product that costs a fair amount of money, and that requires a fair amount of understanding, we invariably succeed with those businesses, right? Because they have the resources and they have a business model that fits our business model. If they don't, right, we tell them, right? Because basically we don't want to fail, right? And we don't want them to fail, more to the point, because we're eating the dog food, right? We live in the word of mouth world too, right? And the worst thing for us is to have somebody have a bad experience with us. Okay. So what have we learned? All right, and I think this is the part that probably is directed at you guys. The first thing is just because it sounds good, it doesn't mean it's right. okay? One of the things that happens with startups is that people basically invest an immense amount of intellectual energy and emotional energy, in coming up with an idea, and then they are put into a situation where they need to defend it, okay? Or they feel like they need to defend it, right? And so, great ideas or concepts are actually relatively cheap. Okay, because basically, there are very few kind of epiphany concepts out there. There are concepts that basically have to get worked through that micro pivot model, that have to be constantly changed, right? And the worst and most dangerous thing to do is to fall in love with your idea. Okay, because basically the idea is it's cheap. I mean, and people hate that when I say it, and I'm an idea guy, right? And so I have the same disease that everybody else does in terms of like having to be careful about defending, or promoting my idea. The fact is that it's much more about execution than it is about the idea at the end of the day, right? So the second thing is, don't get too attached to your ideas, right? Defending your ideas in the face of contrary evidence is suicidal. And most startups fail because people can't, pivot, because they can't look at the data, because they just emotionally or psychologically, they cannot deal with the fact that the idea, is not, actually working in the marketplace. And there are lots of different reasons for that. So it could be that the idea is fine, but that the product market fit, or the business model, or the sales model or the fulfillment model isn't fine, right? And all of those things are just as consequential in terms of the success of a business, as the core idea. And so the most dangerous thing to do is to fall in love with your idea and drink your own Kool-Aid all day long, right? Because basically you stop listening to people and you stop paying attention to the patterns, right? And it is those patterns, okay, not the vision, right, that really are the most important things. What you're really looking for at the end of the day is evidence, right? If you don't find it, you need to change something, right? If you find it and it doesn't agree with your model, you need to change something. If you find it and it does agree with your model, that's great. Look for more of it, okay? But the bottom line is that people get vision and patterns confused a lot. Okay, and great businesses are always founded on a great vision, because basically people see a problem that needs to be solved, right? But the patterns, the way in which those problems get solved are very different, than the visions themselves, right? And so one of the things that I would encourage everybody to do when you look at your ideas, when you look at your vision, and you look at the patterns, is to basically, be alive to the fact, that the patterns are more important, at the end of the day than the visions are. The visions are really belief, the patterns are really facts, okay? And then the last thing is, you got to work on the business while you work in it. One of the things that happens with startups is that basically they're overwhelming. Okay, and basically you are sucked into the minutia every single day, and you cannot basically escape the gravitational pull of that minutia, but it's critically important to basically take time to step back from the business and work on it rather than working in it. Because when you work in it, you're an employee, and that's fine, and you should be an employee of your own business. But when you work on it, you're a manager, right? You're a CEO, you're a founder, right? And being able to basically put that distance between yourself and the day-to-day activities is probably the single most important thing that people don't do, right? Because basically they don't step back, and spend time. Jeff Weiner, who's a friend of mine who runs, now I guess they're owned by Microsoft, but LinkedIn, he spends 2 hours every day working on the business. Okay, now he's a high-powered executive, he's got lots of people, he's got lots of resources, so he can cut out that 2 hours, but he reads books. Okay, he goes and he talks to people, right? He thinks about his business in abstract terms rather than in practical terms, because basically that gives him the insight to understand, where he needs to go. And that's a thing that, that is very difficult to do if you're just following your nose around all day long, right? So, those are the things that we've learned, and I think they actually apply to pretty much everybody in this room who's involved with a startup, because basically, if you avoid the things that are here and do the things that are here, you have a much higher probability, of succeeding in your business, than if you basically just get sucked into the vortex, right? Defend your ideas, drink your own Kool-Aid, and basically don't work on your business from the outside, enough to basically, be able to understand, how it fits. One of the things that I say to people, because I do a lot of these intakes, right? And particularly in new verticals when we go into them, most of the people that we deal with don't know why they're successful. Okay? They have no idea. It's something that they did 2 years ago or 5 years ago, right? Some signature action that they took, some shift in their business model that really is the secret of their success. And if by working on the business, that is the way that you're going to be able to understand what it is that you're doing that actually is having a high leverage impact on the business versus what you're doing that basically is keeping it running but not keeping it growing. So that's it. I guess I probably have run over my time a little bit.
Get off the stage. No, we would love to have some questions. Thank you very much.
Yep. Yep.
Two-part question. What's the typical ROI for a client using the service? And the second one, how do you measure word of mouth conversion rates and sales?
Yeah, and so basically, the ROI is they're tied together, right? But basically, we measure our success on the number of phone calls that we generate for the businesses that we're working with. But it's important to understand also that what we're really doing is we're refining the process for them. So there are really two measurements. One of them is how many phone calls am I generating for you, right? Because they're going to be high quality because they're coming from word of mouth referrals. And the other is what am I doing for you, having looked at the data, because we do this on a monthly basis with our customer, what am I changing that basically is moving the needle in terms of people's engagement and in terms of their interaction. The way our systems work is we send out these promotional campaigns and they're all linked back to additional content on the website. What we really want people to do is engage, and we watch that behavior, and we tweak both the messaging in terms of the call to action, the links that we put at the bottom of the pages, the structure of the emails, or text marketing that we send to people, and we just keep iterating on it, until we get a higher deal. Yes?
What's the size of your team? How many customers do you have? And what does your technology do?
Yeah, and so basically we have 40 employees in this area. We have about 20 employees offshore. They're mostly developers. And we have about 200 contractors, independent contractors that work with us. We have about 3,000 customers in the U.S. today. In this new model that we have right now, we have about 400 or so customers. They are primarily organized into about 15 or 20 categories where we have learned how those categories work, and have gained expertise in those and have built a content library. Our business model really is we operate primarily in El Paso and in Albuquerque, and our focus is on learning a category and then finding large national companies that have lots and lots of customers that actually can use the types of services that we have. Eric.
Sort of quick follow-up to that. We talked a little bit about this earlier. So you're in Albuquerque and El Paso. What have you learned about kind of exploring different markets?
Well, I think that there's probably the biggest lesson is watch out for your appetite. We have been much more successful in secondary markets than we have in primary markets. So we were in Dallas for a while. We're not there anymore. Because the signal to noise ratio in Dallas is just not favorable for a company of our size. So we tend to focus on marketplaces where we can put big billboards on the two main highways that drive through town, so 80% of the people will see them. So that when we call people up, they'll basically go, "Yeah, I saw the billboard," right? Our primary model, our long-term model, is really to partner with large national organizations, insurance companies, people like Home Advisor that have tens or hundreds of thousands of businesses, that basically individual agents or representatives or franchise holders, that basically need to be better represented in their marketplace. I mean, the reality is that today 75% of the people who see a website for the first time after they get a word of mouth referral will spend less than 15 seconds on that site. Okay? Because basically no one reads, okay? And they're operating from the limbic level of the brain, right? If it feels right, okay, in that first 15 seconds, then basically, they'll, the flight, or flight syndrome won't cut in. And so we really are focused in on basically, getting that 15 seconds or to 30 seconds. And the people who run these national companies now are increasingly recognizing that basically their model, which is centralized, big, CMS-driven, sites that have a profile page of the agent or whatever, they are, the reality and the way that people actually respond is completely different now. Right? They will not pay attention to that stuff. The bounce rates on like a New York Life are astronomically high, okay? Because basically people come and they look and they say, every page is going to be the same as this. I'm not learning anything about who this person is. It doesn't give me a good feeling. I'm out of here, right? And so smarter companies are basically starting to devolve, power to their local agents and allow them to basically build websites and marketing programs in local marketplaces, that are tuned to those local marketplaces.
How much of your work do you do on the mobile environment?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
How much of your work is focused on the mobile?
Well, we're a mobile-first company. So every website that we build, every piece of content that we build is optimized for mobile. Right?
Okay.
Maybe, on the second or third visit, people, the ratio between desktop and mobile will shift. Because people will be in research mode, but we live in that first, 15 to 90 seconds, right? That is where we live or die and where our customers do.
And how are you handling millennials?
Actually, we're more and more doing text-based marketing, to people that we know are millennials. But the truth is that most of the businesses that we represent right now are not, are basically selling into a slightly older demographic, right? But we're definitely alive to the fact that, that's going to be a big part of what we have to figure out how to do. Yeah?
I was just in El Paso this weekend and saw your billboard out there.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So what is the average cost with your new model?
Yeah.
For your customers? What's the average monthly cost per service or revenue?
Yeah, so the average cost per customer right now is probably at around somewhere between $1,100 and $1,300 a month, right? And the way to think about this is if you buy HubSpot, which is a piece of software that does some of the email marketing stuff that we do, about 90 days in you realize that you can't use it. You don't have the skills, and so you got to go hire somebody, right? And that person's going to cost you $60,000, and you're not going to be able to find a good one in the market that you're operating in. Okay, and so the cost of ownership is very, very high for these DIY systems. I mean, they're elegant software, that requires very smart people to run them. Okay, and generally the same thing is true for agencies. Most agencies can't afford to talk with you unless you're going to spend somewhere between probably $60,000 and $100,000 with them. And so we fit in that niche, where we basically are able to deliver the services to people at a much lower cost. Yes.
Describe the structure of your process and the flexibility of your micro pivots. How do you balance those apparent contradictory forces?
Well, that's a good question, and I think that that I'd love to say that that we are that we're completely successful at doing that, but there are inherent compromises, right? And so a lot of times what happens is that basically you're looking for the better solution versus best. This is a progress not perfection type of model. Every once in a while we'll see something that clearly is not working, right? And we'll just swap it out. But more often than not, what we do is we make incremental changes to things. Watch the reaction, and basically, and we do the same thing for our customers. We just refine the process, right? And we'll be doing it forever, to be honest with you. Yes.
I'm kind of lost in a lot of the normal words being used for different reasons.
Okay.
In this presentation, and so I just want to understand what is word of mouth, because word of mouth to me is what's coming out of my mouth. Or when I tell Fran and Philip away because that's my
Well, that's what we're talking about. So
how do you capture me talking with Fran?
Oh, well, what we do is we basically capture you on the journey that you take after that recommendation is made. So when somebody basically makes a word-of-mouth recommendation, they're effectively investing in a business, okay? They're saying, I had a good experience, and I think you will too, and that will burnish my social reputation with you, and will make me feel better about myself. So I tell you about that business. The first thing that you do is you go to Google, you look that business up. The next thing you do is you see that Places page. And if that Places page doesn't look right, because very few people go directly to the site anymore. Okay, they look at the Places page, and basically the Places page looks legitimate. That thing at the upper right hand side that either has the picture of the parking lot next to your business or actually has the picture of your business, right? So they analyze that and go, okay, this is worth the risk. For most people going to a website, it's a fairly high risk activity. Okay, because basically they don't want to feel stupid. Right? And there's lots of evidence, primary research evidence that shows that basically risk mitigation is at the center of people. They use those articles and the knowledge that they use as a form of social transaction. They're at a social event with somebody and they start talking about monastic brewing, right? And all of a sudden they say, oh, I know something about monastic brewing because they're getting the emails from Abbey Brewing, which is one of our customers, right? So they're basically able to participate in the conversation, and the ideal is that the person says, where'd you learn that? And they say, I learned it from Abbey Brewing, right?
So everything like driven from like the person goes to the site and then they have to enter their email address or something like that?
Because
I always surf off when it asks me for an email up front.
Yeah, and so lots of people do. But, on average, we probably see a 46% opt-in rate, on the light boxes that we put up on those sites because of the process that we take people through in terms of that intake. We know what their customers are looking for because we ask them enough questions that we get to that information. And then we structure, whether it's embedded or it's a light box that pops up at the top, we structure a reward, either monetary, like, here's a deal for you, or informational, here's the stuff that you're looking for, that is compelling enough that a pretty high percentage of people basically say, okay, I'll take you up on that. And typically what happens is if they don't unsubscribe by the third email, and our open rates on those emails right now, on average across all the categories we operate in, are probably in the 30 to 40% range. So we're pretty much nailing it in terms of what we're sending them. And they're consistent throughout that engagement series, right? So they want the information that we're giving them. If they don't, with the social contract, what everybody has to understand is between 8 o'clock and 8:30 every morning, I'm going to delete 75% of the emails that are in my inbox. Sorry, I got stuff to do, right? And so basically, as long as as we abide by that social contract, then basically, they'll open up those emails, right? Just the very fact of saving them is a very significant thing, right? Because they're going to get back to them, right? Yeah.
Interesting. This sounds like a fairly kind of updated version of the outside of a direct mail envelope. Mm-hmm. That when you get them to the website, that's the equivalent of putting the direct mail piece in their hand. And the question is, do they open it or do they put it in the trash?
Right.
And how do you make that transaction along with the testing that I guess you're doing?
Yep.
The A/B testing that
Correct.
says this works and this doesn't
Right.
work.
Yep.
That sounds very much what
This is directional media, in its own way. It's driven by, by the customer's need to have the information, okay, and by the validation that, that somebody is giving them the information and telling them this is the place that you should get to. So what's different between what we do in traditional direct media is that basically direct media is a shotgun, okay, and what we do is driven by personal recommendations from one person to another, and so it has a much higher level of validity and authenticity.
So, that was my question. The people who you're contacting are not, you've got 150 million email names from somebody that you're mailing out to.
No, we don't do it that way. So we don't contact anybody. They come to the site, they decide that they want to engage with that business because they want the information that that business has, right? And basically they sign up, right? So we don't send any emails to anybody that does not explicitly sign up to get them.
Are you involved in getting them to the site?
We do not sell media, right? And so basically, our model is that there is a sufficient amount of word of mouth generated by successful businesses that people are going to tell them you should go check this business out, and they're going to go to the website. That's where the traffic comes from.
Okay, so you're not generating the people going to the site. You're
Nope.
capturing them once they get there.
Nope. I spent 20 years selling media, and media is, making promises to people you can't keep. Okay, all right, and one of the design models around this was, let's not do that again, okay? Because basically it colors the relationship that you have with the customer, right? And it's not based in the real world. Any other questions? Well, I went over my time, and I appreciate you listening to me. Hopefully it was useful for you guys.
We do have a couple more questions. I'm
Okay.
sorry, we've got some standard questions. So
Okay,
first of
those
all,
are the challenge questions, right?
challenge questions.
Yeah.
Let's see. We were going to change the challenge questions, weren't we? Whose favorite breakfast? No, that was wrong. That's someplace else. Beignets, I think, was the answer. Everyone's like, or donuts, but beignets are pretty good. Red or green?
Christmas.
Christmas. Okay, great answer.
Yeah.
And also, what's the one thing we can do today? This group can do to help continue to grow Boomtime.
I think that basically the thing that you can do is to do what you do every day anyway, which is recommend businesses to people because you think they're going to have a good experience with them. Our business is totally dependent on word of mouth, right? And word of mouth is a very powerful force. It is the original social media, right? And the truth is that if you think a business is worth recommending to somebody, you should do it because that business depends on you, and it will make them give you a better experience over the long term, and it will make other businesses more successful as well.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
All right.